my take on the Falklands is get all of the people out of it and let the penguins exploit the oil wealth.
The penguins are greedy little fuckers like that as well. They will exploit it. It is absolutely horrible, devastating, disgusting this document even exists. But on the same time, I think it's one of the best pieces of theological writing for the last 20 years.
For a document like this to do that, to lay out those facts, shouldn't really be seen as, let's say, sort of outlandishly left-wing or something, you know?
Hello and welcome to Bread and Rosaries, the UK-based Christian leftist podcast that believes that the oncoming dawn of communism seems like it's actually going to arrive faster than a major tournament win for England men's football team. I'm Ben Molyneux Hetherington, and I'm joined by Adam. Adam,
It's not as good as your previous opening, Ben.
Well, for legal reasons, we will not speak of the previous opening. Adam, how does it feel to believe once again that there's no such thing as countries and that patriotism is nonsense?
Yeah, it's good. I'm going back to my kind of natural environment now.
Yeah. He did wash off the England flag face paint he's had for the last 4 weeks before recording this episode.
I watched one of the games at my cousin's, and one of the other people there offered to give me a flag face paint on my face, and I had to kind of politely but firmly decline.
I cannot imagine there is anyone who has spent more than, say, 5 minutes with you who thinks Adam would really want some St. George's cross face paint on him.
I mean, I think they kind of did it as they kind of knew what I would say, but kind of had to offer it to me to be inclusive because they're offering it to everyone else, kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It is, yeah. I'm now at the point where I'm going around being like, those England flags need to come down because, like, there's no excuse anymore. Those are just fascist again, I'm afraid. Like. So yeah, there we go. There's our football chat. That's all I have to say about it.
Move on.
No,
had enough.
What is there to say? The only thing I'll say about it is it perfectly captured the mood of the nation. We've got a new person in charge. Actually, everything got a bit shitter. We carried on being shit, and we've achieved nothing.
Well, hang on. They are insisting that we've gone one better than last time because, I say we, listen to me, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
That
face paint is calling to you.
Men's national football team have gone one better than last time because they won the third place playoff match.
Yeah.
Which, that nobody wants to play.
Yeah, I was talking about Andy Burnham, actually, but I guess, Thomas Tuchel is also a new person who's carried on being a bit shit.
Oh, right. Yeah, we've moved on from the football, have we?
We discussed talking about Andy Burnham's new cabinet, but decided that by the time this episode comes out, that will have been so uninteresting to everyone that will have completely forgotten about it. But I do want to briefly note how fucked it is that the left-wing choice for the leader of Unison, one of the major unions, was the one who blocked Ed Miliband from becoming Chancellor on the basis he was too left-wing.
I thought it was Unite. I thought it was the Unite person rather than
Sharon Graham is that Unite. Yeah, you're right, it is Unite.
Yeah.
She's meant to be good.
Don't be in either of them. They're both shit.
She's better than a lot of people, but she's still not great.
But look, syphilis is better tan AIDS, Ben.
Yeah. Okay. I hear what you're saying.
Join a proper union.
Like what?
What do you mean, like what? Come on. Got to join the Wobblies, Ben. Original flavour.
I don't live in London or Bristol. There's no Wobblies here. Like they just don't London and Bristol only.
No, I'm sorry. There are Wobblies up in Newcastle because I've been to meetings in Newcastle.
There are Wobblies in Northumbria, I believe. I don't think they're actually in Newcastle.
Yeah, no, but they're Northumbria Wobblies. They meet in Newcastle.
Yeah, well, Northumbria. That's
Northumbria.
It's all country folk, isn't it? Like.
Yeah, but there's a difference between Northumbria and Northumberland, Ben.
Yeah, I probably is. I haven't bothered to learn what it is. There probably are Wobblies up here. And I got a lot of time for
I'm
wobblies.
sorry.
Big
No,
respect.
it's not that there probably are wobblies up there, Ben.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
are wobblies there because I went to their meetings.
Yeah, but how long ago? Like,
I mean, I know you're not going to go there, and you're not going to be welcome there, Ben, as
yeah,
a shitty Trotskyist. But
okay, that was very very cool. Do you know, actually, I didn't actually see any wobblies at the Miners Gala the other week. So who knows?
oh, they were there last year.
Yeah, they were.
Did pretty
So
well last year.
yeah, I didn't go around everywhere, so I might have just not seen them. But
No, I think they were there. I think I saw a post from them.
yeah, they probably. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they were. I just didn't see them this year. I remember having a chat with them last year with you.
Yeah.
But anyway, we have gone all over the shop. But just to say, what an insane thing it is that the supposedly good left wing option for leading that union is the one blocking Ed Miliband because he is, quote, too left wing.
Yeah, I mean, I always find it funny that Ralph Miliband produced not only Ed but David Miliband.
Yeah, Ed's the good one. That's the crazy thing, right?
Yeah.
Happens to a lot of famous leftists, though, doesn't it? Like leftist academics in particular seem to produce bad children.
Yeah. Well, it'd be interesting to see what foreign policy looks like now that Ed Miliband's in charge. We might have to add Ed Miliband to the list of podcast enemies. I mean, naturally, he's an enemy anyway, but
and he was once a leader of the Labour Party, so I've taken it as read. Like,
yeah, that's fair. As was Jeremy Corbyn, he's in there. I mean, you already nominated him for your like whatever it was of the year, evil person of the year or whatever.
Yeah. I believe it was Judas Iscariot Award for traitor of the year or something. Yeah, and I regret nothing. Shall we move on a little bit now? Today we're going to talk about the very exciting Kairos document, or Kairos II document that came out not that long ago and has been recently made its way to both the Methodists and the Church of England Synod. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we do that, we will start, as we always start, with what else is on my mind, Grapes.
What else is on my mind, Grapes?
On My Mind, Grapes is something that I sent across to Adam, which is a very good article in, I believe it's in The Nation, is that right? Talking about, it's called How Britain Became a Country Full of Terrorists. And it's basically not The Nation. Of course it's not The Nation, because that's a right-wing paper, isn't it? I just saw the N in the thing and got confused. It's New Lines magazine. And how Britain became a country full of terrorists, the banning of the activist group Palestine Action and the resulting public outcry reveal a steady erosion of rights that goes back a quarter of a century. It's an excellent article. We will link it in the show notes, but it is well worth the read. But I want to draw a couple of things out of it. I mean, there's some great facts in there. The average age of someone in the UK arrested for terrorism is now 59. A woman in
Sorry, I just love that fact.
Yeah. A woman in her 50s is now the typical UK terrorist, and her crime is silently holding a placard. But instead of just focusing in on the kind of injustice of the proscription and arrest of people who support Palestine Action, unlike us, because we hate terrorists, it actually charts a much longer course of history in Britain of the erosion of rights, the erosion of free speech, the erosion of protest rights, in a way that is, I think, a kind of very compelling argument. It goes all the way back. Interestingly, it traces it back to the 2000 Terrorism Act, which is essentially a kind of a tidying up act post the Good Friday Agreement. And it's a way of basically getting all the kind of weird bits of legislation, emergency powers, all the rest of it kind of tidied up now that the kind of era of hostility in the occupied territories of Ireland was mostly over. And then kind of tells a story of how actually successive governments and successive movements have eroded rights to protest, undermined the judicial system, undermined juries' rights, and generally made it much harder to be a political actor in the UK today. And there's an interesting bit where they talk about the good chaps theory of history, which basically is this idea that the British Constitution, unwritten as it is, basically relies on everyone being a bit of a good chap, and that unfortunately that consensus that has held for quite a while has kind of fallen to pieces, because actually in that situation, if you're not a good chap, you can completely manipulate the unwritten constitution and kind of undermine the rights of citizens and residents in this country. So I thought it was quite a compelling read, in that it doesn't just suggest that the actions of the Starmer government in prescribing Palestine action and cracking down very hard on people that were in protest to that prescription was like a one-off thing, but actually the kind of culmination of a long history of restricting rights within this country. The reason, or one of the reasons that I want to talk about this, I find it interesting, is there's been a bit of a debate that I've seen in some places talking about not just the language of fascism, which has been this long kind of debate of, do you call this fascism or is not fascism, but the language of creeping fascism, and the way in which kind of, the erosion of rights is leading us towards a point where fascism becomes kind of more and more accepted, and kind of over time it creeps up on us. And it was an interesting conversation, and this is a relatively old framework now, but there was an argument being made that I think has some real merit, saying that actually the time of creep is over, not in the sense that we're necessarily dealing with overt fascism, not yet at least, but that the structures that would enable fascist government are already in place now. And I don't think, for all I have my disagreements and quite vehement objections to the Starmer government, and I'm sure I'll have similar feelings about the Burnham government, I would not characterise those as fascist governments, right? That would not be in any way reasonable view, in my opinion. But they have created legal structures and kind of, I guess, a media and political environment which requires little change should a fascist administration actually take power.
I do think it's worth sort of hovering over that idea of whether the Labour government, the Keir Starmer government, would count as a fascist government or not. Because I agree with you, but there's a lot of people who are, I think quite clearly wrongly ready to say, well, they're fascists, right? And I get the desire to do that, because the Starmer government has implemented it's not just that they've created the kind of framework for an incoming fascist government. It's that they have as well participated in things that you would expect a fascist government to do, right? So their immigration policy and their attack on migrants' rights and that kind of thing, the attack on trans people, this is all stuff that you would expect from a fascist government, for sure. But it is also stuff that you can always see consistently a liberal government that, is there in the lead up to a fascist government also does those things. It's every single time they capitulate to those talking points, to those ideas, and try to win over those votes. I mean, I'm teaching Granny to suck eggs here, because everyone who's listening to this podcast bloody knows the playbook. They know how it works, right? You start with a liberal government, they keep slipping and slipping and slipping on issues until ultimately people elect or maybe don't elect, but a fascist government comes to power, because people don't work that way. You can't go further and further right and then expect people to go, no, I think that's right enough, because that's just not how it works. And you can see it time and time and time again, where, I see people that maybe started out as your kind of standard kind of socially conservative, conservative voter, who then went to, Reform or the Brexit Party or whatever it is before that, who now Restore Britain are relatively well known on the scene, are sort of there in their consciousness, have just immediately pivoted to that, because when a more right-wing like political party or movement appears that isn't just in the background somewhere, but it makes itself known in their consciousness, they will always just go with that far right political party. There is no too far right for these people. And maybe 10, 15 years ago, you could say, oh, would you believe XYZ policies of this far right thing? And they might say no. But over time, they've slipped that far that they don't realize that they are now fascists.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's an important structure to see there, and I guess an important process to kind of orient ourselves where we are. And I guess my reading of this article is to kind of put forward the case of like, actually there is the structure and framework for doing this. Actually, if you want to repress left groups, Palestine Action could just be the start if you wanted to. I don't believe either Starmer or Burnham have any intention of doing that. But they have set the precedent that it can be done. And therefore, if a Farage government comes in, it is entirely plausible that they use that precedent and use the powers that have been given to start ruling out, left groups. Anyone to the left of the Green Party, potentially, right? We talked about the Wobblies already, but could you imagine some like Farage picking the Wobblies as the enemy within? Absolutely. Would they absolutely?
Well, I mean, Trump's done effectively the same thing to anti-fascist groups and leftist groups, so yeah, and Farage is a Trump tribute act. So
I don't know if that's entirely fair, in that he has become one of those, but he obviously predates Trump in some interesting ways. I think he's Anyway, that's not the point. We won't go down to the lineage of Farage and Trump, but I think it's really important to recognise that a fascist government would not need to do a great deal to actually take the existing state power that's been put in place by allegedly liberal governments and turn it to whichever enemy they chose with very little effort. And particularly, as I mentioned in the article, the idea that attempting to use direct action to change the government's mind or influence the government, as the term is used, it could be considered terrorism. So actually, any sort of political pressure group under this legislation could potentially be prescribed as a terrorist group. And that is a worrying skill to be left into the hands of whoever might end up making up the government. That's all rather depressing, isn't it? Should we go on to talk about something that is, I don't know if it's less depressing. The document itself is...
I was going to say, when you described the document earlier as very exciting, I thought, I get what you're going for there. Yeah.
But it's a hard one, right? So to describe this document, because on one level, it is absolutely horrible, devastating, disgusting this document even exists. But on the same time, I think it's one of the best pieces of theological writing for the last 20 years I've read, right? Like, it is an extraordinarily powerful piece of public theology that is, an incredible call to witness and a call to repentance, particularly for the Western Church. It's hard to describe it because on one level it's terrible that it even exists, but it is also a truly extraordinary document. Adam, I don't know if you are able to maybe introduce to us what I'm talking about when I talk about the Kairos II document.
Yeah, so the Kairos II document is a document that has been drawn up by Palestinian Christians and released late last year in response to the ongoing genocide and apartheid in Palestine. They previously released the Kairos document in 2009, I think it was, which we have an episode on, which you can go back and listen to if you like. But clearly since then, the context has changed. And this document has received a lot of attention because it uses terms that to you and I and us and probably most people listening to this podcast are just a matter of fact, right? Like there is a genocide going on. It is also apartheid. And they're making a case for for peace, actually, but for justice. Now, there's a lot of people who don't like this because people don't like language that points out the reality of the situation, right? So this document has been accused of being anti-Semitic, shocker, who saw that one coming, by all the usual characters, everyone you would expect. People like Ian Paul, who has featured as a subject on this podcast before. People like Ephraim Mirvis, the chief rabbi, the Board of Deputies of British Jews. All of these kinds of characters have accused this of being an anti-Semitic document.
A real who's who of who's a cunt, right? Like that's.
Well, also the one that I find really interesting is so there is also a something called a Christian Declaration Against Kairos II, which is.
I haven't seen this. I bet it's not very good.
Exactly what you think it will be. So it was started by a guy called Regan King. Have you ever heard of Regan King, Ben?
No, not at all.
Regan King is the pastor of the Angel Church in Islington. The Angel Church in Islington is an independent conservative evangelical
in the
church.
People's Republic of Islington. You shock me. What's going on up there? Yeah,
in the People's Republic of Islington. Yeah, even they are allowed to operate. Regan King is also the former communications officer for, I think, probably the Christian organisation that I personally hate the most in the UK. Do you know who that might be, Ben?
Is it Christian Concern?
It is Christian Concern.
Yes. Yeah. Sworn enemies in the podcast, Christian Concern.
Yeah. So he started this thing, which I think is really fun. So when you look at it, you see that they are quoting a lot of scripture. Basically, it's just very, very bad theology. Again, a lot of the stuff that they take umbrage at, it says it uses the term apartheid to describe the necessary security measures in place due to thousands of lives lost in hundreds of terror attacks against Israel and its civilians, and calls for the end of Israel, referring to it as a settler colonial project and using the term military occupation. Now, I don't know about you, Ben, but I think all of that is just established fact at this point, surely. But these people really do not like it.
On one level, it's insane that you can just publish it by being like, well, the facts that we all have that we accept are true just aren't true. But another level, that really does that's the modern conservatism in a nutshell, right? Like, actually, the relationship of reality and truth is pretty irrelevant to what you believe.
Yeah, exactly. But this thing, anyway, this document has been signed by the people you would expect. Ian Paul, for example, was one of the top signatories of this thing. Ian Paul as well also shared he shared something by a guy called Canon Guy Wilkinson, who put up a post where he shared the response to the fact that the Kairos II document was going to be debated, potentially kind of received by the General Synod of the Church of England. And again, the same kind of thing that you would expect, where they're taking issue with, words like genocide, words like apartheid, and framing this stuff as, particularly with the Board of Deputies of British Jews, framing this stuff as anti-Semitic, right? And it's like they're talking out of one side of their mouth half the time and then another side of their mouth the other half the time, because they say, one of the first things they say in this thing is, we understand the motivations of church members to express solidarity with Palestinians. But at the same time, they also more or less immediately go on to talk about, essentially, to make that classic thing of equating Israel with Jews.
You're telling me that the defenders of Israel are being anti-Semitic?
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Because it's okay. It's okay when they do it. It's not okay when Palestinians or those who are siding with Palestinians against a colonial oppressor do it. Right?
And to be clear, the document is exceptionally specific and I think really well written on distinguishing Zionists and Jews. Right?
I mean, I'm sorry. It's actually not a radical document.
Yeah.
The fact that we're talking about it is in one respect kind of odd, because we are a radical podcast, right? That's just what we are. But the fact that we would talk about this, I mean, it's not out of the realms of, what would make sense, of course. But it's not a document that should be difficult to accept and subscribe to, right? And indeed, actually, a lot of people who are not this podcast have indeed read this document and on some level accepted it. I do think it's worth mentioning, though, that the Church of England changed the word "receive" in the original motion by was it the Bishop or the Diocese of Carlisle? But the
I think it was the Archdeacon of something.
Oh, they are, yeah. But they've changed "receive" to "hear," because there was, which is sort of a halfway house fudge thing, because it's something that I guess the backers of genocide basically have kind of put in place as an amendment to try and soften some of that language, so that the Church of England isn't seen to be just overtly accepting the document as it is, but is just hearing the voices of those who are crying out, and I think, that amended version passed with, I mean, it was not even close to not passing. But I do think it's a real shame that amendment was accepted.
It's obviously an attempt to, it's actually something we teach people to say. In if you've got someone who's very upset, and you don't necessarily agree with what they're saying, but you want them to feel heard, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. That's something you would use as a way of saying, I'm not going to agree, I'm not going to support what you're saying, but I want you to feel that I've listened to you, right?
Exactly,
and that's
to say
exactly
that to
what it's
people
trying
who
to
are
do.
experiencing a genocide as well just seems, sadly, I don't want to say spineless, because a lot of people have really. I'm glad it passed, even in the version that it did, right? I just think that if the best you can do for a group of people who are experiencing a genocide, who have been experiencing a genocide at least for the last 3 years, arguably for the last 3/4 of a century, is to say, "Oh, we hear you. We hear your." It's like saying, as you say, kind of, "Oh, well, we hear that you're sad. We hear your emotion." Right? But what you're not hearing at that point is the factual basis for why they feel that way. And I think it's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's one of the ones, as you say, you could have gone so much worse. at least they accepted it or like heard it, whatever that means, and that people would have worked quite hard to make sure that happens. I'm interested to talk a little bit about what you said about it's not actually a radical document. And I think that's quite an interesting thing to kind of suss out, because I totally get where you're coming from, in that large parts of this document are just explaining basic facts. But I think both the context of it, in terms of being an explicitly Christian document from the churches in Palestine and church leaders in Palestine, and the fact that it names settler colonialism specifically and talks about the economic motivations of Israel in its assault on Gaza, make it, if not as radical as we are, a more radical document than it could have been, if that makes sense. I think, particularly that logic of settler colonialism is, in some ways, it's settled history, right? But in another way, in the context we're in now, actually arguing that settler colonialism as a particular form of state making is actually a really important kind of point to win.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose as well, if we're going to really get down to the meaning of the word radical, a word that means to the root, then yeah, maybe you've got a point there. I guess. Yeah, I guess what I mean is I mean, you've sort of already said it, is that, the facts of the matter are quite bare before us now. So for a document like this to do that, to lay out those facts, shouldn't really be seen as, let's say, sort of outlandishly left wing or something, but I think often is.
And I guess at the same time, for it to be accepted by the Church of England tells you how radical it is, right? Like, this is probably as radical a document as it could be to have a chance in hell of being even heard by the Church of England. And to be fair, accepted by the Methodist Conference, right? Like, shout out to the Methodists who I mean, did the right thing.
The thing is, this is an ecumenical document, right? So
Sorry, sometimes, how do we not have that'll be an ecumenical matter soundboard?
That is a good point. Maybe maybe that's the next one to go on.
What a
that
show!
Be an ecumenical matter.
Written by no one somehow. I mean, incredible that I just emerged.
I mean, the first AI show that's ever been. But yeah, I mean, it's not a. It should be a document that anyone can accept. Is the point? It's an ecumenical document, and so it's written in such a way as to actually not alienate people, right? Like, it's written in such a way as to make a good and robust and a liberation theology based case for the Palestinian people and for the ending of genocide and apartheid and settler colonialism. But I think the incredible thing about all of this continues to be people just denying reality. And it's as if, because again, that is one of the things that people have a problem with, is describing Israel as a settler colonial state. It's something that Ephraim Mirvis in particular, I think, picked up on, and we'll get to him in a bit. But it's the idea that Israel is a settler colonial state. And what I find interesting about that is that where Israel is now is sort of akin to where the United States was, well, shortly after founding, shortly before and after a founding, where you've got people pushing effectively the borders of the state further and further, and committing acts of genocide against the indigenous population and claiming that land for their own. There is no discernible difference between the founding of those two states, other than the fact that they were founded 200 years apart.
Yeah, I think you're right To an extent, I would say there is a potential difference in the context, in that Israel is arguably the last gasp of what you might call traditional colonialism.
Which is sort of my point, really. You know, exactly that Israel is doing it in a way that we have become kind of unaccustomed to and kind of wanted to forget a little bit, because our colonialism now mostly, not entirely, looks like neo-colonialism, right? Which is sort of why people get up in arms about Donald Trump doing all of his stuff, being more kind of interventionist, certainly than he would pretend he was, because there's this kind of liberal idea that we have overcome these ways of doing things, that we're better now. But actually, the way we do it is economically, largely.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting example of you've obviously had the football team and the rugby team, not that anyone cared, of England play against Argentina. And one of the things that I was really shocked by was the unveiling of all these banners where it turns out the Argentines still really give a shit about the Falklands, a place that most of us keep forgetting exists. And one of the really fascinating things is the arguments around this, from a British perspective, all revolve around, like, the people that live there, like, want to remain British. It was terra nullius when we found it, like all the rest of this. And it just kind of made you go, man, actually, it's really funny, because kind of historically, the argument would have been like, basically, fuck you, come take it then, right? Like you think you're hard enough, come and have a go. Like, and actually, there's this weird, like, and I'm not anywhere near well educated enough to discuss whether the Falklands should be considered colonialism in that way. But, like, actually, in terms of talking about how we talk about the occupation of spaces beyond, the immediate vicinity of that nation, like, it is very much there is no sense of, like, trying to argue just on the basis of, like, we're big and strong and we've got it anymore. And I think you're so right. That's because we just do that economically rather than through military power. And so, yeah, I think it's a really compelling point, actually, to think about, do you know what, the era of we've got more might than you, so we're going to smash you up, like, was meant to be over. And there's something about the way Israel conducts its business that exposes the kind of true character of both colonialism and neocolonialism.
Yeah, I always find the kind of Argentina and the Falklands thing quite interesting, because I can't remember which actor it was, and I don't know if it was at the time of, I think it was later than the actual Falklands War, but there was some American actor who got very, very animated about, sided with the Argentinians against the British, and how this was just classic, British colonialism. And I find that very, very interesting, because, look, frankly, my take on the Falklands is get all of the people out of it, and let the penguins exploit the oil wealth of the Falklands.
The penguins are greedy little fuckers like that as well. They will exploit it. Like,
did I ever tell you that when I was a kid, I might have told you this before. When I was a kid, I knew that there'd been this Falklands War, and I couldn't really work out why the British had really cared enough to send a task force to go.
It remains unclear to me to this
retake
day,
it, right? Yeah. Well, because Maggie Thatcher was on the ropes, right? And if you're in war, it's
Yeah.
But I asked my dad when I was a kid, why did the British retake the Falkland Islands? Why did they care about something like that? And he said that it was because the Argentinians were abusing the penguins.
That is so classic. Like, there's something very deeply British about, like, we are angrier at people who are like nasty to animals than we are people who are nasty to humans, right? Like,
yeah, but I mean, I don't think they actually were abusing the penguins.
It probably was a thing at the time, right? The people thought that, but yeah, stop. Be nice to penguins. That's what I'm saying.
I think it was just my dad having a joke, which is the kind of thing that dads do, right?
Yeah.
Like much like the time we saw a sign where we were walking, because it was like MOD land, that had the words Tiger Watch written on it, which was just an army. There's a sign for the army to care about, not for us to care about. And my sister asked him, "Why does that sign say Tiger Watch?" And my dad pointed out over to the bushes and said, "It's because if you look over there, you have to be careful because there might at any time be a tiger watching you."
Fantastic.
My sister,
love that.
Like, we used to walk along collecting shell casings, right? Like bullet casings, right? Because that's where they practiced. And she had loads of them sort of in her dress, and she threw them on the floor and ran home crying.
Oh, poor thing. She was 24 years old.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm John T.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Malky.
And we put together a magazine called Shibboleth. If you're watching this on video, then we're holding up some of our favorite copies now. If you're listening to it on audio, imagine the best magazine you've ever seen. We are a Christian leftist magazine. If your politics are leftist, if your politics are liberatory, if your faith is deconstructed or progressive, I think you would like Shibboleth magazine, and you can check us out at shibbolethmag.com. And we are sponsoring, with no money, this episode of Bread and Rosaries.
Shibbolethmag.com.
Reconstructing.
Resisting.
Renewing our minds.
We will come back to talking about the Kairos document a little bit more in a moment, but first, would you like to hear a saying of the week?
Saying of the week.
Adam, have you heard of Flora Tristan?
No. Completely new to me, this
Oh,
one.
you misogynistic pig. Flora Tristan has got a French mum and a Peruvian father, but kind of descended from Spanish aristocrats, born in April 1803. And her full name, are you ready? I apologise for my I think there's some French,
Oh, I'm
some
going to
Spanish,
enjoy this.
some Peruvian. This is going to be an absolute mess, but I have to give you the full name: Flore Celestine Therese Henriette Tristan Mososco.
You communists. You rattle off a lot of fancy words, don't you?
Completely wrong. That is absolutely an aristo name, right? Like that is.
Well, is it? I mean, if it's did you say she was Peruvian?
Kind of French Peruvian, yeah.
Because like Spanish naming conventions are such that they all have really long names, so probably not.
Yeah, possibly. I honestly don't know.
So what that is there, Ben, is an example of, I would say, at least xenophobia on your part.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm a little Englander at heart, you know.
That's why you like rugby.
Yeah. So she gets married when she's 17. Important fact is that her dad dies when she's very young, leaving the family actually in quite bad financial situation, having been into quite well for some time. But she marries when she's 7.
What year are we talking here?
She was born in 1803, so she was probably married in 1820. Does that matter?
I just got to get in my head
the
the kind of era. Yeah.
Married at 17, she has 3 children, and at age 21, they've separated. She ends up getting a divorce, spent some time travelling, working as a maid, and actually her ex-husband then starts to harass her. A few years later, she starts travelling a little bit more, travels to Peru, starts pursuing a vocation as a writer.
Travels where, sorry?
To Peru.
I did not hear the P in that. I just heard travels to Peru.
Peru, yeah. No, travels to Peru, and then her ex-husband attempts to seize the children, and he eventually tries to shoot her, and is jailed for attempted murder. So, kind of a lot going on there. From around 1835, so after divorce, but pre all this other stuff going on, she begins to move in socialist and feminist circles. She has an interesting relationship to religion. So she is very critical of the Catholic Church, but ultimately sees socialism in very specifically Christian terms as the kind of ultimate expression of the maxim of do unto others as you would have to do unto you. And she kind of ends up having this quite almost messianic sense of herself, like not in the sense of like she thought she was Jesus, but in the sense of like the call on us today is kind of to continue the work of Christ for us all to kind of become messiahs in a way. She is very critical of men of mathematics, kind of the secular atheist, and obviously this is
sounds like me in school, to be honest.
yeah. Kind of is quite critical of the kind of branch of the French Revolution and post-revolution that is very, well, what we would probably refer to as analytical philosophy now, right? Like very much in that kind of vein of trying to understand everything, logic, maths, all the rest of it. And kind of, she's not explicit about this, but it does feel like there is a sense that she views that as quite masculine. I'm kind of maybe reading past what she's kind of known to have written about and said, but yeah. So she's absolutely a socialist, does loads of work with various kind of socialists. She was at a meeting that Robert Owen was doing in Paris, and someone criticised him for not having a female leader there. And then Flora Tristan stands up from the audience, shouts, "I am here," and Robert Owen bows to her.
Love it.
Yeah. So kind of really cool. She's a big fan of paid work for women. She was kind of an early advocate of what you might kind of call family abolition. She ultimately wanted the disappearance of the family structure, socialized child raising. So yeah, very, very kind of far ahead of her time in terms of her views on this stuff. And she was very much a kind of early feminist. There's kind of the sense that she is maybe setting up what the platform on which kind of first wave feminism then kind of happens. She kind of has quite a early socialist feminist approach here, right? In a way that kind of actually gets forgotten a little bit and then taken back up again. So she kind of sees the demands of feminism and the demands of socialism as inextricably bound up with each other. Like that, you can't have one without the other. And she is very much upset with anyone who claims to be a socialist who is not also advocating for rights of women. She does really interesting work talking about Peru and talking about how even in a place that is maybe in some ways more traditional, that women are able to find ways of being free. And although women can't kind of get educated and they're married by like 11 or 12 and they have to kind of be completely covered up when they're walking in the street, at the same time they were didn't take their own husbands' names. Actually, because of their big dresses that they wore, they could basically do whatever they liked because no one knew who they were. And actually, they were kind of self-educated in a lot of ways. And she kind of says, look, actually, even in a place like this, women find a way to create some level of freedom for themselves and yearn for fuller freedom. She is actually shouted out by Marx and Engels in the Holy Family. So she obviously predates them. And they said that she expressed elements of emergent independent working class socialist politics. So yeah, often described as the mother of feminism and of popular communitarian socialism. So, someone who is very much a socialist, very much an early feminist, doing the groundwork, and conceptualizes all of this as a kind of Christian, if a somewhat unorthodox Christian in her approach. That is Flora Tristan. She dies reasonably young, actually, very sadly, probably of typhoid. Not everything about her was perfect. She was, at times, could be a little bit not conservative. That would be harsh, but there are times where she seems to shy away as being labelled as too radical, while also absolutely being a feminist and a socialist. So not perfect.
I find that quite interesting because she's not the first and she won't be the last to try and distance herself from being seen in that way. And I kind of get that kind of impetus, to not actually want to be seen as being, because people see being radical, i.e. a left-wing radical, as being extreme, right? It's not necessarily, right? Like it's, we've already had this discussion, but that's how people see it. And so I sort of get that kind of, I think, is it Michaela Loach, the climate activist, who I think she recently released a book called "It's Not That Radical."
Right. Yeah.
And I haven't read it, so I can't. She's quite interesting, actually. I'd quite like to get her on the podcast. But the point is, I kind of get wanting to have that broad appeal, and therefore sort of saying, "Oh well, it's not. We're not. We're not mad. We're not extremists."
But it very quickly devolves into Starmerism.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure it will for Michaela Loach, but
no. Just give you the last thing that I think you'll really like about her is that she left Paris and did a tour of France not long before she died, promoting the ideas in her final book, The Workers' Union. She went from city to city, meeting with groups of workers, trying to get them together in a national workers' union. She wanted to kind of break down occupational, regional, and political barriers to get a kind of national and even global working class solidarity. And that's kind of just one big union wobbly stuff, really. Like she could absolutely be considered a kind of forerunner of IWW, one big union, because she wanted it, French and ultimately all workers to be in one union to have their power together. So arguably a proto-wobbly.
Okay, well, we'll give that an out.
Thought you'd like that one. I thought you'd be into it.
Well, I think it's interesting with the obviously I am a member of the IWW and I think they're really cool and all the rest of it, but they're a anarcho-syndicalist trade union, right? Which is cool and I like it, but it's actually not my tendency. Obviously a lot of us work within that kind of context and are wobblies and so on. But I always think it's interesting because a lot of those things that perhaps we would traditionally have seen as quite different, there would be quite a clear divide between an anarcho-syndicalist and an anarcho-communist because they are different things. But maybe there's just too few of us for it to matter anymore,
Honestly, I think you might be onto something there. As sad as it is, there's a point at which you have to put at least some of the differences aside, right?
Well, I'm doing a podcast with you, for fuck's sake. So,
Should have known that was coming, shouldn't I? I want to talk a little bit about some other criticism of the Kairos document from our old friend and person you have been, I would argue, too generous to in past occasions, the Bishop of Blackburn, Philip North.
Hang on, did you say that I've been too generous to him?
Yes.
Maybe. I mean, I did. To be fair, I did write an article in the Church Times specifically criticising him as well.
Yeah. Oh, to be fair, you've been very critical of him. It's just at times you're like, well, he has some interesting things to say at working class stuff, and I just don't think you should give him the time of day.
Well, look. What I will say is, I think that it is my Christian duty, Ben, to find a kernel of humanity in everyone. Okay. Even the Bishop of Blackburn.
Anyway, he was very upset about this document accepted. And
shocker.
Yeah, he essentially said, Synod's vote to hear the Kairos II document will only add to a growing tide of anti-Semitism in our country.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
And then there was also some criticism of how it will kind of be taken and impact the Christian-Jewish interfaith relations.
Yeah,
there's also our old friend Giles Fraser is also very upset about this whole thing.
Where's he been for a while,
Yeah, being a dickhead somewhere, I presume. And he is absolutely against it. It says it's a disgrace and the Synod members should hang their heads in shame. And the reason I want to bring this up specifically, and the thing I find really funny about it, is that the actual document itself explicitly calls them out in advance. It is like, yeah, absolutely, I know that what you're going to say. Like, absolutely, we know what's going to happen. So I'm just going to read something out. This is 3.8 in the document. A bit long, but I think it's important to say. We condemn all who exploit and support the charge of anti-Semitism to silence the Palestinian voice of truth. We reject every attempt to conflate anti-Semitism with opposition to apartheid and with pressure to hold Israel accountable under international law, particularly through the use of definitions and documents designed to serve Zionist ideologies and interests under the guise of combating anti-Semitism. The misuse of the term anti-Semitism distorts and obscures the reality of genuine anti-Semitism which still exists in our world, which we strongly condemn alongside all forms of racism, exclusion, and prejudice, including Islamophobia. Zionist ideology claims to represent and protect the Jewish people, but in doing so it has conflated Jew and Zionist as though they were one and the same. Not every Jew is a Zionist, and not every Zionist is a Jew. This confusion has done great harm to Judaism itself and to its image worldwide. There's a bit also where it talks about honouring the number of Jewish voices that are kind of anti-Zionist, and that is really fantastic. So I think, yeah, absolutely.
No, that's anti-Semitism, Ben. I'm sorry.
Yes,
that's anti-Semitism.
But they absolutely called it, and they specifically talk about how in the past Christians have used the weak excuse of Christian-Jewish interfaith interactions as a way of actually avoiding showing any sort of solidarity with people.
Well, it's not even just avoiding showing solidarity with people. It's a way to actively side with an oppressive colonizing state. Like it's not that it's a passive thing; it's an active thing. You know.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's incredibly important, right? Actually, that all the people that criticise it coming out of it, the document knew it was coming.
Yeah,
they're that predictable.
There hasn't been a single criticism that I've read that the document hasn't preempted.
Yeah. And I think what really kills me is that they specifically talk about they prioritise Jewish-Christian interfaith dialogue over truth, human dignity, and life itself. And I think that is just absolutely dead on the money, right?
Yeah.
And, actually it reminds me a little bit of the people who are theoretically in favour of same-sex marriage, but oppose it on the basis that it will cause further division. And I just have no time for it. Do the right thing or get fucked, basically. There's no...
Well, it's interesting as well. Philip North, in particular, has used the same argument for why he doesn't support women in ordained ministry.
And, I just don't buy it. I think
who at that point is causing division?
I think he's a misogynist who loves genocide. That's what I think he is. And I think this pretense at being some sort of liberal, or actually it's because I love women but I don't want to cause division, and I'm concerned about the Jewish community. Bollocks, absolute bollocks. But it's so telling that no one has come up with any criticism of this document that wasn't already preempted within the document. Just embarrassing in some ways, actually, that it is that easy to know what they're going to say. And I think really importantly, I've seen no engagement from the critics when the document specifically talks about the rising tide of violence against Christian leaders and laity in Palestine. There is an explicit call to say, actually, we, your siblings in Christ, are suffering. And, there are lots of organizations that are really love to talk a big game about Christian oppression. And yet they're just not interested when Christians that are being actively oppressed and are subject to ethnic cleansing are calling for their help. They're just not interested.
Wrong kind of Christian, aren't they?
Yeah, 100%.
The wrong kind of Christian, and unfortunately, their oppressor is the state of Israel, and doesn't matter who you are, you could be the right kind of Christian, and I suspect that these people would still side against you because they don't actually care about the oppression of Christians or anyone else, right? Because everything is through the lens of spreading the gospel, which I would suggest is a very different gospel to the one that I'm aware of.
You mean the gospel where we worship a Palestinian God? That gospel?
Yeah, indeed. I think one of the things I think is just clearer and clearer every time when they talk about, i.e., those who are against this document, who are defending Israel's actions, when they use these things like Jewish-Christian relations as an excuse for not engaging in the way they should and for backing Israel and so on and so forth. What they mean by that is Zionist Jewish relations with Zionist Christians, right? They don't mean Jewish-Christian relations in general because, and I will never tire of saying this, at every single march I've been to in London in solidarity with the Palestinian people, the Jewish bloc has outnumbered the Christian bloc dozens of times over, right? There are many, and there are not that many Jews in this country.
Yeah, as I say, right? there's an element of that should be an absolute source of shame to Christians in this country, right? Not because it's exactly, but just on a mathematical level, that shouldn't be happening, right?
And absolutely kudos. We love these people these Christians who are there.
Yeah,
but,
100%.
I found when I've said this before, but I found when I was training for ordained ministry, the college that I trained at, I found it very, very hard to engage anyone on this stuff. Right. Basically, there was one time when a few other people there, and I mean a few, actually joined me on one of these marches, I nearly gave the city away, well, people probably know, but even in the city we were in, not going down to London, just going into the city that we were already in and attending a march in solidarity with the Palestinian people. And it's not to say that everyone in that college, I blame them individually and that they're all anti Palestinian and all of that kind of thing. It's to say that there should have been more. Not everyone can go to a march, but yeah, sure. I shouldn't have been largely the only one going there.
And actually, in some ways, would it be better if they're anti-Palestinian? No, not really. But in some ways, I can respect it more than what this is, which is probably people that think it's very bad what's happening out there, but think that it's bad for their career or a bad idea to be seen doing this stuff. It's cowardice, right?
Yeah.
It is, I think it is that simple.
And a lot of it's just that centrist nonsense as well of both sidesing it as well.
I do want to briefly touch on something that I disagreed with in the Kairos document.
Okay.
Yeah. This whole thing about Israel being a settler colonial state, I don't know where that's come. No.
Wow.
Heresy! Remove this filth!
1.23 says, we are now living in a new era, an age in which might makes right and peace is imposed through military power in defiance of international law and the rulings of legitimate international courts. And I just don't think that's a new thing. I think maybe there is, it harks back a bit to what we were talking about earlier, that maybe we've been kind of pretending that's the reality, but I think might makes right has been the rules for a long time, and it's just maybe more revealed in the current actions than it has been more recently.
I mean, I agree, but I mean, ultimately, this is a point about international law, isn't it? They're trying to appeal to international law in order to appeal to people's better nature to make that point, right? So I fundamentally, I agree with you. This is not new. But, since 1945, we've been living in the era, a few years after, whatever, but we've been living in the era of supposed kind of international law and, the rule of law and equality before the law and all of these lovely liberal sounding fluffy things that actually have never really been the case. You know, how many US presidents have been hauled before, you know, the ICC, you know, or you know, taken to the Hague or whatever? None, right? And actually, probably almost all of them should have been, you know.
Sorry,
so it's
what
always
the fuck
been
is that almost? Who the hell are you almosting there? Like...
I don't know, man. I just want to cover myself because there could be one. I can't think of one, you know, but there could be.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not so well versed on American presidents and history and foreign policy and all of that kind of thing.
I'm
to know.
just checking you weren't letting Obama off the hook. You went, actually, Obama seemed nice.
Yeah, no, he was the good one, right?
Yeah.
What was his? Was it Hope? Hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
no. Obama. Can we just be clear, right? I might even clip this to put on the bloody socials, because every time I criticize Barack Obama, I get people who are very lovely, well-meaning people who I think are often kind of like left curious, or just not, you know, they hold broadly leftist views, but they're not super kind of, you know, they haven't examined it in loads of detail, who really like Obama. And I just want to say to those people, I understand why you would say that. I get that, because his message was one that resonated with a lot of people. But we have to get over this thing. I mean, obviously, I'm an anarchist, I would say, of electing any leaders whatsoever. But we have to get over this thing of electing leaders based on charisma, based on vibes, right? Because Barack Obama, as with every American president, as we have firmly established at this point, was indeed a war criminal, right? They call and indeed he did things that I think were crimes against humanity within his own borders. You know, they called him, one of his nicknames was Deporter in Chief. You know, so we need to get over this thing of imagining that these liberal leaders are, you know, wonderful because A, they're, you know, marginally better than the Republican alternative, and B, speak with some kind of charisma. And I also hold all the British leaders that, I mean, obviously British leaders, none of them could ever have as much charisma as someone like Barack Obama because they're British. But, you know, I make that point for them as well. And Andy Burnham will be no different. We'll come back here in a few months' time and I'll be proven right.
I don't know what it's like. You're being like, oh, we can't elect leaders on charisma. Where was your support for Keir Starmer? You know, like what?
Okay, Ben. Would you like me to rephrase that? We shouldn't elect leaders based on. I mean, I've already made my point. We shouldn't be electing any leaders, for fuck's sake. But we
seems like
we shouldn't.
You got what you wanted leaders, and didn't enjoy it.
We shouldn't be electing leaders based on charisma. If you're going to elect leaders, if you're going to insist on having these bloody things, then elect them based on their policies, what they actually stand for. And Keir Starmer would have failed on that.
But you at least support his lack of charisma, right?
I mean...
Can I just remind you, if you don't hate Obama for the reasons of like the drone bombing and all other stuff, just a reminder of the beer summit. Do you remember this?
The beer summit?
Yeah, so there was a situation where a black Harvard professor was arrested by a white police officer in a clear racial profiling case.
I think I remember this, yeah.
And Obama basically said something of like, the police officer acted stupidly or whatever. And they were like, whoa, is he calling a cop stupid? Like, what do you mean? Like, yeah, I'm calling a cop stupid. Like, what are you talking about? Like
American cops. Like, yes, we're calling cops stupid.
Yeah. But then like he eventually invited the professor and the cop who arrested him to have a beer at the White House to discuss things.
No.
And then invited the press to take photos of it.
No. Oh, come on.
Like,
hang on.
So,
hang on.
Gentlemen, this is Democracy Manifest.
Yeah, really funny, honestly. In that, like, it was totally tone deaf, stupid, and actually damaging to the movement towards Black Lives. Yeah, go and Google it if you also, like Adam, don't know about it.
I mean,
it's
I know
mad.
I know that Barack Obama was basically really shit on Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, this has become massively sidetracked from what we're meant to be talking about.
So let's go back on track then. I want to end a little bit by talking the demands that the Kairos document makes on the Western Church, because I think it's really important to reflect on what it asks us to do as the church, and it is quite explicit in what it thinks the Western Church should do. I thought it was really interesting and good to see that it specifically demands that the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement should be adopted by Western churches. It is very much in favour of the BDS movement, and I think, yeah, but I think actually it's probably a call to all of us who want to live as Christians in solidarity with Palestinians to actually re-strengthen, reaffirm our commitment to trying our best to follow the BDS boycott. I know that I have tried my best in some ways, but there are ways in which I have failed and continue to fail that. And actually, I really did fail.
Coca-Cola?
No, I do not drink Coca-Cola anymore. We've talked about this on the podcast.
Yeah, but I figured you probably had gone back to it.
No,
I just don't have that much faith in you, Ben.
I remain strong. I'm even drinking Tango rather than Fanta. This is how bad things have got for me.
Sorry, can you call Fanta by its proper name?
Sorry, Nazi Cola.
There you go.
I don't know if you've ever done that joke on the podcast before, but I've so many times I've heard you made it. Yeah.
To be honest, if you listen to this podcast and you imagine that we're going to come up with any new jokes, well, more fool you.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think it's really actually reaffirmed to me the importance of actually on a personal level doing that. But it also specifically wants churches to participate in the BDS movement, right? So I think that is there was no conversation either in the Methodist Church or the Church of England about actually what that might look like in practice. But I do think that needs to be a thing we're pushing for. Probably more on a local level than national level to begin with, is actually that churches that we're part of, we should be asking them to commit to BDS.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to report, not to sort of toot my own horn here, but I don't know if I can actually put this out, but I'm going to say it anyway. We in the church I work for were looking at new tech just today, and I told my boss that HP are an Israeli company who make their stuff in the occupied territories, and so we did not buy HP. It's not an easy conversation to have always, but it is the conversation that we need to be having.
Yeah, but you know, it's one of those things where, like, actually, it's such a simple thing to say to your church, you know what, we should be buying HP. Actually, we should, and not just for these reasons, but also for these reasons, potentially not be buying things off Amazon. You shouldn't be wearing Reebok shoes, because why would you wear Reebok shoes? I'm sorry, like even leaving this aside.
Is that a fashion critique?
I don't get it. But yeah, like, actually, the primary targets are not necessarily difficult to do that, right? And I think we should absolutely be encouraging our churches to make choices about this. And then also, obviously, like, actually looking at more widely divestment. And again, this is more likely to be on a national church level, but actually the Church of England in particular has a huge amount of investment money. It's already got a shitload of it in arms companies, but actually it should be a basic requirement of a Christian church that money doesn't go to arms, but it doesn't go to any investment in Israel, right? I think that seems like a big step for some reason, but that's such a basic request.
It's something that people have been campaigning and trying to get the church to do better on for a long, long time. You know, the fact that we still have to, I mean, I haven't done it myself. I've tried to get down there, but the fact that we still have to go and sit outside church house and try and block the entrance for the arms fair that happens there every year or every 2 years or something really shames the church, I think. And also this comes about through the kind of neoliberal drive to kind of split off different parts of an organization. right? So what the church always says on that is, well, Church House is a separate entity to the Church of England, because they basically they split it off to be a separate company, there to make money. It's not really a separate entity.
For listeners, as Adam said, that I made the wanker gesture, not at him, but at that absolute load of bollocks.
Yeah. It's just excuses. It's excuses to allow, and the same thing with engaging on the boards of particular companies. We see these arguments made again and again and again, and none of them hold up. So, yep. In short, BDS in the church is what we need.
I want to highlight another couple of things just as we come to a close, is the call within it for what it calls costly solidarity. And I don't know, my assumption is that is purposely riffing off the Bonhoeffer idea of costly grace, right? And it's not made explicit, but it's hard to say anything other than that. But by putting that idea of solidarity in there as a specific call, and it calls it a faith-based stance. True solidarity is the embodiment of our shared humanity and fraternity. And I just think that is, such a powerful call, right? Like, actually, in the same way that real grace is costly, real solidarity is costly. But we in the Western world are more able to bear the cost.
Yeah, I think it's a really important call. I think you're right. That's exactly what I thought as well. I thought you can tell that Lutherans have been involved in this. But I think particularly when solidarity is being criminalized, that's what we're getting at there. Like it is going to potentially be very costly. It's going to be costly to go and, I'm going to say, hold a sign. I'm not going to say any more than that, because for obvious reasons. But again, it's costly.
And I think each one of us needs to take some time to reflect on our own conscience and actually work out what that means for us, what the call is for us. And no, not everyone can go get themselves arrested, right? I totally understand that. I am certainly not intending to get myself arrested. That is not
typical Ben, always taking the easy way out.
You be careful. Who do you think's raising this baby if I'm in jail? You're on the hook, buddy.
Well, that baby's going to end up an anarchist, Ben. How do you feel about that?
My rebellious genes in it will mean that I'm going to have to raise the baby thinking that I'm super conservative, so that it naturally rebels against me and becomes a socialist.
My question is: are those genes? Are those rebellious genes, or are those? Is it nature or nurture?
Yeah, good question. Probably not one we can answer
so you're
here.
Not that rebellious, are you? You're not a communist.
And the other thing is, we repeat and emphasize our appeal to the churches of the world to pressure their governments to isolate Israel, hold it accountable, impose sanctions, boycott it, and ban the export of arms until it complies with international law, ends oppression and tyranny, and adheres to the principle of justice and peace. And do you know who should hit like an absolute fucking sledgehammer? Is the bishops.
Everyone in the Labour government.
Well, but the bishops who sit in the House of Lords. It's disgusting that there's bishops in the House of Lords. Obviously, the House of Lords should be abolished and replaced with a genuinely democratic.
Remove this.
That's for the bishops in the House of Lords.
Okay, I was going to say, I thought you were
not for you.
Yeah. Hey,
I'll do one for you as well. Ben,
but not for this opinion, right?
But that Christianity has no place in the inner workings of state.
Yeah, absolutely. But if they're there, what the hell are they doing to work towards this call from their siblings in Christ? Actually, technically speaking, the Church of England exists at the heart of the British state, okay? We might not like that. I personally would like not to live in a theocracy, but that is the situation that I find myself in. But if we can...
That's where I should have played the heresy button.
But, if you're there, how are you going to heed that call? Right? What are you actually doing to push for the government to do something? I mean, we'll start with not actively supporting the genocide and go from there, right? And I know the answer is nothing, but actually, if you are reading this in the Church of England as a bishop who sits in the House of Lords, this should make you deeply uncomfortable and ashamed.
I couldn't put it any better myself.
I think then, on the entirely predictable note of us being mean to Church of England bishops, we should probably call this a day. We will link to the Kairos II document in the show notes. It is well worth a look. It is a genuinely fantastic document that is, obviously it's disgusting that it has to exist, but in the world where it has to exist, it is a much needed intervention into that world, I guess. And that Kairos Palestine in general is well worth kind of looking at and find out more about as well. Adam, where in the world can people find you?
You can find me on various social media platforms, TikTok, Blue Sky. I haven't really posted on Blue Sky much, but maybe I will. Instagram @CommieXIAN.
Brilliant. All the podcast contact details are on our website, breadandrosaries.com. If you want to get in contact with us, email details are there. We'd love to hear from people. Recommendations, thoughts, questions, ideas, criticisms of Adam, all welcome. We love to hear from people, so do get in touch. Patreon details on the website if you want to chuck us some pennies to keep the show going. Thank you very much for listening, everyone. We will see you all very soon. Bye-bye.
See you later.